Well, perhaps not the least, but it should be good to stress that I am a physicist. I'm not an economist, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a physicist. And that means that I am used to investigating very simple systems. Last time I checked, a hydrogen atom in Europe was still identical to a hydrogen atom in the United States, even indistinguishable, according to quantum mechanics. So here I am talking about economics, a very complex system, and economists study the behavior of people in the handling of scarce goods. Mass psychology, psychologists even. So what am I doing here? Well, I'm a politician, and a politician should be able to talk about anything. Yet it is not physics. And still I see that economists use numbers, statistics. It seems to be something like a quasi-exact science. And as a physicist, I'm still quite surprised to see that many people trust economic laws, whereas every situation and every time period is different. And it's not like these hydrogen atoms where you know that wherever you measure and whenever you measure, you get the same output. Still, our economy is characterized by numbers. And last Tuesday, our king said in the Knights Hall in The Hague, all traffic signs, all traffic lights are on green. Everything is like this in our economy. Our Prime Minister always does this. So GDP is growing, housing market is back on track again, many people buying houses, and the government debt is increasing. All traffic lights are green. Well, if the king says so, who am I to deny? Well, I do. I think we are fooling ourselves. The situation is, I think, very close to what we saw in 2008. Again, there is a housing bubble. There are huge debts, and we have weak banks in the south. Huge streams of money are going from north to south. And my big worry is there still a buffer left? Too big to bail. I mean, that's worth a tweet. Too big to bail. Still, the same mechanisms are introduced by the ECB, the national banks, and the same theories are being used. And that also worries me, because in the 20th century, labor was cheap and money was scarce. And I think all economic theories we have been designed to fit that situation. But this is the 21st century, and now money is virtually for free. We see the ECB printing 60 billion a month. So money is free, and actually labor is very scarce, high quality labor. And the money, although it's free, I don't see it entering the real economy. I don't know what happens with it, but I don't see it coming to the SMEs and the real industries that can borrow money from banks. I see this vital role of banks totally handicapped at this moment. I think the role of banks is making possible other enterprises, enabling other enterprises to borrow money and to serve customers. Well, Dr. McIlroy already mentioned the Chicago School of Economics. The goal, according to Friedman, is making money, maximizing profit for shareholders. And it focuses exclusively on maximizing the returns to shareholders. And according to Friedman, that is the societal task of businesses. And I think this has destroyed our worldview in the past decades. In a paper by Dr. McIlroy, I read we need personal reformation, we need institutional reformation, and we need systems reformation. And I fully agree, because we live in a fallen and broken world. Yet, if we want reform, we need to use the language of the existing system. And since that is a quasi-exact science, we somehow need a new metrics for measuring the impact of business, for measuring sales or turnover or profit in a different way. And in the past month, I really was inspired by the new book by Bruno Roche and Jacob on completing capitalism. And Bruno Roche has been working on that for years and years now, and now he has read it down in a book. And he writes that for the past 50 years, leaders in the business world have believed that their sole responsibility is to maximize profit for its shareholders. But this obsessive focus was a major cause of the abuses that nearly sunk the global economy in 2008. And also, Bruno Roche writes that Milton Friedman's model, which focuses exclusively on maximizing returns to shareholders, has caused tremendous harm to people, planet, and even to profits, Bruno Roche argues. And he advocates a detailed alternative that takes a broader view for businesses to do well. And they claim, and that's very interesting, that they can deliver superior financial performance precisely when they mobilize and generate human, social, and natural capital along with financial capital. And in his book he describes how the model has been implemented in live business pilots on various continents, and I think that's very exciting. So his book starts with the notion that high profits do not inhibit or promote growth. There is actually no correlation between profit and growth of a business. And that's quite logical, because Dr. McIlroy already told us, if your firm lives longer, you make more money in the end. I mean, it's just the integral over time, right? That I understand as a physicist. So Bruno Roche tells us you should not only look at financial capital, but also at natural capital and social capital. And if you maximize across the different forms of capital, you will make more profit, financial profit, than using a profit maximization approach only. I was struck by the fact that you showed us this one slide with secular and Christian standards, and in the bottom of that slide you showed that the secular standard is profit only, and the Christian standard should be the simultaneous realization of multiple standards. And that's exactly what Bruno Roche shows in his book. So I think we need to have a broad look on what prosperity really looks like. And it has less to do with money than we think. And actually, the ChristenUnie election program this year was, we always give it to the Central Planning Bureau, the Economic Bureau of the government, to calculate whether everything is economically fine. But we gave our election program also to the Planning Bureau for the Environment and the Social Cultural Planning Bureau. And they all started calculating our election program, because we think you need all aspects to be okay, and not only the economic, financial aspect of your election program. Actually, the word Planning Bureau is, I really don't like it. It sounds very communistic to me.
That was the idea.
Yeah. But it also suggests that you can really plan all this and forecast and calculate this. And as a physicist, I know the boundaries of where models work and how careful you should be with models. And whenever you translate economics to journalists, or economics or physics to journalists, you have this problem that somehow in this translation, the boundaries of the models disappear, right? And then this guy on the street reads the newspaper and thinks we can forecast anything we like. Still, So we have this election program being calculated through these three bureaus, and we think that you can choose, you must choose which indicators you want to maximize. And that should not be GDP. I think actually GDP is it's a ridiculous number. And since the 90s, also the turnover of banks is in our GDP. And I think that's a big problem, because their turnover increases when they lend more money, and that's really not contributing to the real economy in any sense, except when they would lend it to real companies. On the national scale, you could also think of looking at indicators other than GDP, and I just love this country, Bhutan, and you must have heard of the happiness index, the national happiness index, right? So they optimize personal values, national values, but also in between they have these community values. And I think it's like 31 indicators, and the King of Bhutan wants to maximize these 31 indicators. And there's also like a knowledge of your traditions is one of the key indicators, but also the level of illiteracy, which should decrease. So it's a very broad way of defining prosperity in your country, and I just love it. And actually, we just had a political debate, I think half a year ago, in Parliament about a broad definition of prosperity for our country. And it was a great debate to be in, and of course I have no clue how to ever implement this into real politics. It's still a dream, but having this in our national parliament, I think was a breakthrough. So, back to the banks. I think banks should serve society because they have an important societal task and function. And what is valid for ordinary enterprises, that you can have more profit if you also take into account social and natural capital, I think should a fortiori be valid for banks. And in 2008, in September 2008, on the 14th of September, so like 6 days after the big first indicators that things went wrong, Will Hutton, economist, wrote, within the week, right? The financial crisis presents grave dangers for the world, but a huge opportunity for the politically bold. The big problem is that the financial markets and uncommitted shareholders do not value what business values, namely research, innovation, motivated people, brand, loyalty, trust, independence. All this was already recognized years before 2008. And what the markets value instead is the takeover of businesses, so many of which go wrong. So I think, despite the banking crisis of 2008, many systems problems have not been solved. Banks still are too big to fail, and I'm afraid even too big to bail. The cash position of banks is still too low, and the tension between who takes the risks and who bears the risks, as we heard from Dr. McIlroy, that tension is still there. The level of remuneration in the banking sector is still worrisome, to say the least. We need the financial sector to be exemplary in solidness and trustworthiness. Economies cannot function in a healthy way when banks cannot be trusted. And for the financial stability of the Netherlands, we need stable system banks that can guarantee a stable traffic of money, just to know that we can pay our bills. And it cannot be the case that risky products can overthrow the system's part of a bank. So, as ChristenUnie, we choose for reliable banks, better solvability. We need to improve the solvability norm so that high risks are not borne by the system's products. And we believe that when a bank takes more risks, this bank should have a higher solvability norm. And in any way we would want to see the solvability norm to go up. So Basel IV is in the making, and we expect that, and we hope that it will go up further than in Basel III, because actually I think nothing has really changed that much since 2008, except that the debts have risen above the ceiling. So if any of these measures can be found in the new government coalition accord, you may consider this to be our ChristenUnie fingerprint. Banks should return to their societal task, being enabling businesses to do business, so that businesses can make money. Making money for the sake of making money is not only useless, it is dangerous. And as long as we do not reform our banking system, this system will shake our society every so many years. So we need bold politicians to stamp their foot, to enforce and to stimulate reforms in the economic system and banking system, and thus to protect the people against this cycle of evil human behavior. And for this we need politicians to be the examples in our society to uphold the professional values, professional ethics we expect from others. Among these, I think Christian politicians should strive for the highest possible aim. Thank you.